This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed. The weekly wrap is the week in news and what's coming up. I'm Kate Watson.
It's not a drag queen, Kate Watson.
It sounds a bit like it. I'm just a bit sick. We've all been a bit sick this week.
I know. You've done so well to be here, so thank you for pushing through.
You were sick earlier in the week. We're human, Claire.
Yes. And look, I'm Claire Kimball.
You are Claire Kimball and you are sounding great.
Thank you.
We mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but we're going to do it again because we know people might have missed it. If you're listening to this episode on Spotify's Daily Drive, search for News Club and hit follow. We might not be there much longer.
Yeah, so Spotify have told us that playlist is getting deprioritised. So if you want to keep listening, make sure that you do get the weekly wrap. Just hit follow and we'll be there for you.
Safety is important. That's the safest thing to do. The news, Claire, footy finals are upon us. We also cover off the latest from Israel. Big protests there this week. Elle Macpherson made a lot of news. Lots of headlines about Elle, so we'll just unpick those a little bit. And Bluey.
We get to talk about Bluey yet again. And of course, off the top, a big week for the economy in Australia. We'll get you across that.
And our Paralympians.
Paralympians, can't forget about them.
Let's do it. Claire, each week we look at Google Trends for the most searched news of the week. We looked on Thursday. By far and away, the most searched news topic was the Paralympics. It had over 1.9 million searches.
Yeah, and just for context, when you dive in, the next topic for Australian news had 100,000 searches. So by far and away, the leader. And look, not surprising, it's got so many great things, great talent, really emotional stories too about the athletes and their families as they go on to compete at those games.
Ticks a lot of good news boxes, that one. For anyone who hasn't been following it closely, a quick recap on some of our best performances. We're currently sitting ninth on the medal tally. 14 of those are gold. Alexa Leary has won 2 of those in the swimming.
Yeah, so her final leg in the 100 metres mixed relay was really something else. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favour. Google her name, be one of those searches and dive on in and have a look at it. She broke also the world 100 metres freestyle record, not once, but twice in one day.
Yeah, she is the story of the games at the moment. Everywhere you look, it's Alexa Leary saturation. I think I actually mentioned her weeks ago on this podcast when the swimming trials were on.
Yeah.
Because I saw her story. It was the first time I'd come across her story, which, just to recap, was that back in 2021, she was in a high-speed cycling crash. Her parents were told to say goodbye to her over 8 times. 3 years on, she's won 2 gold medals.
And she's a bit of a character as well. So another good reason to dive on in and have a look at her. Her post-swim interviews really are something else.
Did you see her parents though?
Oh, so, yeah.
Her parents' post-swim interviews are like, I cried, like I do.
And watching her dad.
He chokes up.
Yeah.
It's something else. After what they've been through, it is just something to behold. She's one of many stories, of course. Lauren Parker won gold in the triathlon. That was on Monday. By Friday, she had picked up silver and a gold medal in the cycling.
Again, like what an incredible athlete. On the track, James Turner, he won gold in the men's 400 metres. He set a new world record as well. He said he was just proud to be an Australian.
He really wanted to get that in.
Yeah.
He wasn't even asked.
No.
He just said, I just want to say that I'm proud to be Australian.
Had to do it.
There's so many more. We'll finish with Jed Alschwager and Nikki Ayres though. They took out the rowing gold medal in the mixed doubles sculls event. They become the first Aussies to win gold in rowing at the Paralympics. I didn't realise that.
A really bright point for rowing for Australia because, of course, we didn't do that well at the Olympic Games, even though they get a lot of government funding. So lots of questions for rowing, but a really bright star for them for the Paralympics, that's for sure.
They said post-race that it's their friendship off the water that was key to their success. You literally just have to watch them, their dynamic, just momentarily, and you can see that it is the friendship that's the really special part of their tale.
And you know what too, watching that mixed event, why don't we have more mixed events at the Olympics?
It's a good question.
I reckon it would be great.
But the mixed relay in the swimming at the Olympics is a bit contentious.
because of matching.
Yeah, I think it's
matching ability and matching speed and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
but you're right. I wonder why.
I don't know. I like mixed events.
Yeah, it's good. Oh, well, I mean, who do we take it up with? Someone? I don't know.
Surely we know someone in the network.
I know someone at Swimming Australia.
Yeah, true. You might be married to someone that works for Swimming Australia. Actually, now we think about it, you do know someone.
I know some people. Anyway, look, the Paralympics have a few more days to come, 4 more days, I think, and then Monday morning, 4 a.m. Aussie Eastern Time is the closing ceremony.
And that's that.
4 more years until we get to do it all again. The other big news story this week, the ongoing tussle between the Albanese government and the Reserve Bank over the state of the economy. The week started on Sunday, in the way traditional weeks start, with Jim Chalmers saying the RBA's interest rate rises have smashed the economy.
When you got up Monday morning, if you're like me and dive straight into the newspapers to see where things were setting off, that's absolutely the message that we started the week with. It ended, though, with the Reserve Bank Governor, Michelle Bullock, saying that she understood that the cost of living crunch may see some Aussies, and this is her quote, ultimately make the difficult decision to sell their homes. She said that something that the central bank is monitoring is exactly what's happening, particularly with low-income earners who are spending a lot on their mortgages and a lot doing just paying their bills. She said there's about 5%, she thinks, of mortgage holders that are going to find it very difficult to keep up with spending and servicing their loans.
They're people with what they're saying is a cash flow shortfall. To take a step back for a moment, those two statements from Chalmers and Bullock are fairly extraordinary when you read the commentary, but they aren't new. They've been both saying stuff like this for a little while now.
Yeah, it's just pulling it together in a week like this. And this is sort of where it comes to when you're trying to pull together, how did this blow up this week? If you're the governor of the Reserve Bank, you're pointing to the need to get rid of high inflation, as you say. She's been doing that for a really long time. She says that the longer it persists, the more damaging it's going to be to the long-term future of our economy. If you're Treasurer Chalmers, you're pushing back on some of the commentary that's coming at you and from the Reserve Bank that it's actually government spending that's keeping inflation high.
According, though, to Chalmers and the Prime Minister, because he followed up to say, what Jim Chalmers said was fine, it's all good. These comments aren't a criticism of the RBA, rather a statement of fact, and this is the quote, rate rises have an impact on the economy. That is what they're designed to do.
Yeah, it was kind of his best, duh.
Yes, that's a good way.
High interest rates do smash the economy. We knew that and everyone knows that. What I'm actually saying is a fact. But you can understand that some are pointing to the timing of all of this, politics being at play. Of course, two things there. We're heading into an election, but also this week there were these economic figures coming out from the Bureau of Stats, and not just any old economic figures, the ones that record our quarterly growth rate. What happened was on Wednesday we found out that Australia's economy grew by 1% over the last year. That's the weakest rate of annual growth that Australia's seen for about 30 years.
Yeah, so taking out the crazy pandemic times, which was an anomaly, I guess the question is, where is this going? One thing we do know is the RBA isn't lowering interest rates anytime soon. Definitely not this year.
No, Bullock has made that very clear, and again this week. It's safe to assume, though, that we're going to hear a lot more from our politicians on this. Of course, as I mentioned, the election coming up. And I know it's said about every election, but it's especially true this time that the economy and managing the economy is in the frame.
Yeah, so what the government's critics say is that Jim Chalmers was seeking to lay the blame for the tough economic conditions we're in on the RBA because cost of living pressures are firmly on voters' minds, and what tends to happen is voters blame the government of the day for that.
Yep, exactly. So put on your news radar when you see these headlines. There's a lot of jockeying going on at the moment. It's going to be a real talking point. And Kate, for us, it's not the only situation that we were talking about Jim Chalmers.
So Jim Chalmers had a big week in the news, but he took some time out on Friday to visit Rochdale State School in Brisbane to see our media literacy program, Newshounds, in action.
I know.
How good.
A huge week for the treasurer.
A huge week for the treasurer, but he's visited a school.
Yeah, making the time to come and see Newshounds. He's been engaged with discussions with us about, of course, our push to look for some government funding for Newshounds. We think that media literacy and making sure that our children can become critical consumers of media and all the stuff coming at them online is really important. We're really heartened that the treasurer in a busy week would take some time out and come and see it in action. So, fingers crossed, he's in charge of the money.
He's in charge of the money. If there was a guy that could make this happen, we're hoping Jim Chalmers is the guy. Hopefully Rochdale State School as well. I really enjoy that visit because we know they're loving the Newshounds media literacy program. And we're hoping that we might get it completely funded so that we can have it in every single school in the country.
Oh, how good would that be?
Three other stories from the week, starting with what's been going on in Israel. So there've been huge strikes and protests by Israelis pushing for their government to prioritise the release of hostages above the immediate defeat of Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though, not surprisingly, has refused to change course.
Yeah, and not only is he holding the line, he's rebuked those protesters and the strikers. He says that they're putting strain on what he said was Israel's social cohesion. There've been strikes and protests against Netanyahu and the government before, but what happened this week saw one of the biggest displays of dissent during wartime in Israel's history.
Yeah, so the flashpoint was the announcement on Sunday that the Israeli military had discovered the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages who were previously thought to be alive. Officials said they were killed by Hamas captors between Thursday evening and Friday morning. This was further compounded by the release by Hamas of videos of each of the 6 as they sent what would be their final message to their families. So hugely emotional.
Oh, and really grim to see. So much sadness coming from that region, of course. And those protesting say that that could actually have been prevented had Netanyahu been more agreeable to some sort of ceasefire. Netanyahu said sorry. He was very apologetic that that had happened. But what he said is that if the government makes any concessions in the negotiations around a ceasefire, that would send a message of murder, that if they did that, that would actually bear some outcomes.
And I guess this is the important point, is there are still many, many hostages. So 101 in Gaza still, they believe. About 36 of them are feared dead. Adding to the pressure over this question of how Netanyahu handles things was a statement from Hamas on Monday night that the militant group is operating under new orders should Israeli soldiers approach their locations in Gaza. They didn't say exactly what those orders are, but the fear is that we've seen it in action with those hostages killed last week.
So, of course, the conversation really is about what Israel is going to do. And it's not like Israel's government is united on this. Of course, we've talked in the past about the difficulties of that wartime government. Netanyahu, of course, is on one side. On the other is his defence minister, Yoav Gallant. We've talked about him in the past. He's a very significant figure in all of this and in Israel. Netanyahu and Gallant have been at odds for quite a while, but it was particularly bad this week.
And this is about the terms of the ceasefire with Hamas, which we don't know all the details of course. They're private negotiations. But Gallant says Israel should accept a withdrawal of Israeli troops from the southern border area of the Gaza Strip as the price of a ceasefire deal with Hamas. I think you might think that they're sort of polar opposites, Netanyahu and Gallant, but they're not. He's no pushover in this. He's really hard line on Israel's national security. But he thinks that Netanyahu's aim of total victory in Gaza is crazy.
Yeah, and this is where the focus really is in this discussion. If you hear about the Philadelphia corridor, this is what it's all about. It's a 14-kilometre strip of land. It's only 100 metres wide in some areas. It runs the entire length of the Gaza border with Egypt. Israel currently controls it. The discussion about these ceasefire negotiations is that Israel should relinquish control of it. That's what's on the table in these talks.
And Netanyahu just says no way.
No way, yeah.
So that's one of the sticking points of this deal. He says, and just to reiterate, Netanyahu's line from the very beginning has been that any agreement with Hamas is agreeing to the end of Israel.
Exactly right. Yeah. So that's why he's so dead set around we have to get rid of them. this is the existential crisis that they're facing.
My recommendation this week will give you a few more details on this. So that's coming later in the podcast. But yeah, a very big week in Israel. Another big story this week is completely different. Elle Macpherson's interview with the Woman's Weekly. She talked about treating breast cancer with alternative therapies. She said she followed an intuitive, this is her quote, heart-led holistic approach. She said she rejected surgery, chemotherapy and radiation. She did undergo a lumpectomy though, which is surgery that involves removing a breast lump.
Yeah, exactly right. But the reason for the interview, so just to take a step back, I guess, is that she's got a book coming out. It's called Elle. It's not an autobiography. It's what they call a series of wisdoms.
Oh.
So I didn't know wisdoms was a thing.
I think it is.
Lessons learned, I guess. Okay. And in the chapter that's titled Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, she talks about her cancer diagnosis, which she's kept secret for 7 years.
Yeah, I kind of thought to myself, did I know she had breast cancer? But no, we didn't know that.
We didn't know that, no. And I had to do that sense check as well. But look, it's sort of a case, I think, of read the article because get into the actual thing about what she said, because the headlines aren't necessarily representative of all of that. So we've got a link in the episode notes to do that if you want to do that
I
today.
actually did the interview with Dr. Carl, which is out at the moment and you can listen to it. And he talks about this, the fact that the headlines are could potentially be very misleading to what the actual story is. So we've got a link to the Dr. Carl episode if you want to listen to it, but also a link to the Woman's Weekly article so you can read it in full. It's the headlines that the medical experts were worried about this week. They're worried about the article because there's too much detail missing about the specifics of her condition, but they're also worried about the way it was reported.
Yeah. In fairness, there are lots of people saying, actually, when you read the article, there's still a few concerns. But, yeah, the summary in the headlines is a big problem too. Without getting really technical, what the experts who commented on this week say that she has the sort of had the sort of breast cancer that actually can be treated with a lumpectomy. 95% of cases don't spread. So there's a good chance that once you take something out that's done and dusted. But when you zoom out, the fear is the media reports are pretty confusing, particularly for people who are currently getting treatment for breast cancer, that it might cause them to just pause and go, am I doing the right thing? Am I getting the right treatment? Should I be going through all of this? Lots of questions.
Yeah, for Women's Weekly's part, they wrote that she has courage in her convictions, a dedication to living her life of wellness, and the success she has enjoyed in doing so is admirable.
Admirable, that's what they said.
So she's doing okay, as is Bluey.
Is there nothing that Healer Pup can't do?
Pretty much, no.
We're talking about the launch of the family's $1 this week. Did you get in line at the post office? Well, you've been sick and there's been a bit going on.
No, but
I
also
just know the Watson family are
we
huge
love Bluey, but
fans.
we're definitely not those kind of people that like buy all the stuff.
Kind of
no. I mean, there's no judgment. Like, buy what you want, but no.
So Monday morning, Australia Post issued 10 $1 coins. Features illustrations of Bluey, her sister Bingo, the family, the friends. Australia Post's website crashed because the demand was so high. And look, I'm no tech expert. I reckon you have to do a pretty good job to knock over Australia Post's website.
Well, yeah. I mean, would they be used to something like this? Probably not.
Probably not.
They wouldn't.
But they're a major institution. Like, they have to have really good security in place and good volume and traffic allowances in place, I'd reckon, as one of our national institutions.
The thing about these coins is I didn't realise they were going to make such big news all the time. Like, this isn't the first time we've heard about them.
When they were announced that they were doing it, when it was building up to the initial release, then there was a guy and a couple of guys, I think, who were arrested because they stole 500 kilograms of them, about $63,000 coins. They were stolen from a storage facility in Sydney. It's been in the news a lot.
A lot. If you've got your hands on some, well done.
Well done on the $1.
What's coming up? AFL finals. Big game this afternoon in Sydney. Swans versus GWS. avoid the area unless you're going to the game is the advice, I think.
Look, anyone knows if you're in Sydney what Sydney traffic is like.
Yeah.
However,
Avoid the
around
area.
these special events, just stay at home, I think, unless you're determined to go.
There's heaps of other games, but we just thought that might be a good
Yeah,
shout out for Sydney people
sure.
because it's going to be busy. We already talked about the Paralympics closing ceremony. There's some other sport coming up too. Tomorrow is the US Open women's final. Monday is the men's. No idea who'll be playing in them yet as of the time of recording.
Yeah, and particularly in the men's, a lot of the top guys have been knocked out, so it'll be interesting to see who prevails.
No Aussies.
No Aussies. Did pretty well, though, towards the end to get 3 into that sort of round of 16.
Yeah, but there were no Aussies in the women's or men's, so it's just for the love of tennis. For any Australians out there who'll be tuning in. The NRL finals kick off on Friday next week. Not sure who'll be playing in those either.
I did ask you earlier in the week, because I don't follow the NRL that closely, how your team was going, and we just shut down that conversation very quickly.
South fans will know that we don't want to talk about that. But
just move on. Yeah.
This weekend will be a good closing round because there's a few things to be settled. On Monday, the final report from the Royal Commission on Defence and Veterans Suicide is due.
So that inquiry has been going on for quite some time, about 3 years or more, 5,000 submissions, lots of discussion about the report's findings, what's next, whether there should be an independent commissioner that actually looks into mental health and ongoing issues around suicide rates of our serving defence personnel and veterans. So lots to go on that. That'll definitely be in the news early in the week. On Tuesday, Apple's unveiling the iPhone 16. It's a glow time event.
We're up to 16, hey?
Yeah, I was thinking.
I don't even know what I've got. I feel like I've got like a 6 or something.
I'm with you. I don't know what I've got. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wonder what the features are. We'll
My phone
find out.
works, which is good.
My phone also works, which is also good. But there'll be plenty. People get really excited about this stuff, so that's a good one to shout out. Last week, we briefly mentioned the upcoming US presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. That's happening Wednesday, 11 a.m. our time.
Yep. SBS, Channel 10. There'll probably be others that carry that one.
Surely it's on the ABC.
Oh, look, usually most of them carry it, particularly given the time zone. So there's not a lot going on TV at 11 a.m. our time. So most of them end up carrying it.
I suspect more people might tune in to daytime telly on Thursday when the MTV Music Awards are on. I get confused about these awards. What's what? This is the VMAs.
The VMAs.
They're
the
my
Video
fave.
Music Awards.
Yeah, they're my favourite because you get really
It's pretty
wacky
kooky.
performances.
Yeah. And the outfits are it's very, I would say it's very rock and roll, but it's probably not the right way to say it these days.
All I know is a very good mate of mine who's my entertainment consultant.
Oh.
She keeps me up to date with all of the, what's hot and what's not.
Oh, can I get a line into your entertainment expert?
We need it. Well, you get it through me.
Yes, true.
But Chapel Roan and Sabrina Carpenter are performing and they are so hot right now.
So hot right now. I know enough to know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that'll be a thing. Back home, probably slightly less sexy. The Prime Minister's Literary Awards will be announced this week.
You think it would be slightly less sexy? I don't know. I've heard that the Prime Minister's Literary Awards go off.
Okay. All right. I can't wait.
We looked at the shortlist when we were talking about this podcast, pulling it together. I haven't read any of the books.
I haven't read any either, unfortunately, but I do like a short list for getting into some stuff. So I'll be taking I've been very busy reading Lee Sales books and Dr. Carl's books. And, everyone that we've been interviewing.
Yeah, I've done little reading this year, but I do like to try and regroup at the end of the year, so it sort of acts like a bit of a recommendation list, so I'll dive into that too.
There's actually a short list for Australian history, which could be really interesting because I find history books hard to navigate, and I'd like a recommendation. So that
cut
could
it
be
down.
good.
Good one.
Finally, Friday marks the last day of Term 3 for Queensland. We're heading into a big block of school holidays where across Australia, all of the states are on holidays at different times.
Over a month, I think these ones happen again.
Yeah, bit annoying for our Squiz Kids team. They're not really sure what to do with their content, but if you're a fan of Squiz Kids, just head on over there and they'll tell you what's happening. There's
Lots
always
of
stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Squiz recommends, I mentioned that mine would be about Israel, the Front podcast with Claire Harvey. They did a really good wrap-up of what's gone on this week.
Oh, good one. That's, a good one to listen to. I really enjoy that podcast.
Yeah.
They do issues really well, and Claire is terrific. So, I'll dive into that one on the weekend. Thank you for that recommendation. For me, if you're at the pointy end of this nerdy part of US elections, there's a good article from Politico about exactly what this first debate is. Of course, settling the rules has been a whole thing, goes into exactly what is allowed, what's not allowed, and why the various sides of this have been playing out over the week, what the advantages are of having a mute microphone, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a good read.
Claire is very excited.
Oh, I love that stuff.
Yeah, all of the links are in your show notes as always. Do you think we have to do Squiz Press today? My voice has probably had it.
You've done so well. I don't know that we do. I think we've told people what Bryce is up to with Newshounds and Jim Chalmers. I think
Dr. Carl, we've mentioned
Dr. Carl with News Club. Have a listen to that with Newsmakers. I think we're done.
I think we're pretty good. Thank you so much for listening to Weekly Wrap. As always, we so appreciate it. And we'll be back next week.